The ruins of the human colony smoldered under the pale glow of the shattered moon. Smoke and ash filled the air, mingling with the scent of burning steel and the metallic tang of blood. The battlefield stretched for miles, a graveyard of fallen soldiers and shattered war machines. Behind a crumbling concrete wall, Sergeant Jack Reynolds crouched, his power armor scarred and dented from hours of relentless combat. His grip on his plasma rifle was tight, his breath steady despite the chaos surrounding him. Only 5 soldiers remained under his command, all bloodied and running dangerously low on ammunition. The enemy, the Dominion, loomed in the distance, massive reptilian figures clad in sleek black armor, their war machines standing like silent sentinels of death. They had conquered world after world, their path of destruction seemingly unstoppable. And now they had set their sights on Earth. They think we're broken. That we'll just surrender, Reynolds muttered, his voice barely above a whisper, but carrying the weight of defiance. Private Keller, barely past his 20th year but hardened by war, slammed a fresh power cell into his rifle, his smirk betraying a reckless confidence. Then they don't know humans very well, he said, peering through the cracks in the broken wall. Heavy footsteps echoed through the ruins as the commandant approached, his towering figure casting an imposing shadow over the battlefield. His deep, guttural voice carried across the ruined streets, amplified by the helmet's speakers. Humans, your resistance is pointless. Your species is weak. Lay down your weapons, and I may grant you a swift death. The words were met with silence from the battered human squad. Reynolds exhaled slowly, glancing at his men, each one exhausted, injured, but still standing. The enemy saw their dwindling numbers, their wounds, their desperation. What they failed to see was the fire still burning in their eyes, the sheer will that refused to be extinguished. Reynolds grinned, the corners of his mouth curling despite the dried blood on his face. He tightened his grip on his weapon and stood, leveling his rifle at the alien commandant. You want Earth? He called out, voice filled with unshakable resolve. You're gonna have to burn for it. A split second later, the night was set ablaze. Reynolds pulled the trigger, plasma fire lighting up the darkness as his squad joined in without hesitation. They barely had time to react before the first wave of energy bolts ripped through their ranks, dropping 2 warriors instantly. The commandant roared, dodging a shot as he raised his massive energy blade, signaling his troops to charge. The ruined city erupted into a battleground once more. The humans, though outnumbered, fought like demons unleashed. Keller took out an enemy soldier with a precise headshot before rolling behind cover, dodging a barrage of plasma fire. Corporal Diaz, her arm badly wounded, still managed to lob a grenade into a cluster of advancing, the explosion sending reptilian bodies flying. Reynolds ducked as a pulse blast narrowly missed his head, the heat searing past his cheek. He turned, fired, and watched as another enemy fell. But for every they cut down, more emerged from the darkness, their numbers seemingly endless. The sky above rumbled as alien dropships descended, their sleek metallic hulls gleaming in the firelight. The battle was a storm of chaos and death. The humans fought with everything they had, bullets, knives, fists, whatever could keep them alive for just 1 more second. But despite their sheer determination, the tide was shifting. They pressed forward, closing in, relentless and merciless. Keller's rifle clicked empty. He cursed, reaching for his last magazine. We're running low, Sarge, he called out. Reynolds gritted his teeth. He knew it. He had known from the start that this fight wasn't about winning, it was about standing firm, about making the enemy pay for every inch of ground they took. A shadow loomed over him. The commandant had closed the distance. With a snarl, the reptilian warrior swung his massive blade, aiming for Reynolds' chest. At the last second, Reynolds rolled to the side, the energy weapon slicing through the stone where he had stood a moment ago. He came up on one knee, raised his pistol, and fired into the alien's side. The commandant staggered but did not fall. Instead he turned, eyes burning with fury, and lunged again. Reynolds braced himself, but before the blade could strike, Keller tackled the alien from behind, driving his combat knife into the exposed gap in its armor. The let out a guttural roar before collapsing, lifeless. For a fleeting second, there was silence. Then the realization set in. The humans had killed their leader. The forces hesitated. And in that moment of hesitation, Reynolds and his squad pressed forward, firing with everything they had left. The aliens, leaderless and momentarily disoriented, faltered. Push them back. Reynolds roared. With renewed energy, the humans surged forward, driving the enemy away from their position. They had survived the night, against impossible odds. They had held their ground. As the retreated into the shadows, Reynolds stood among the ruins, his chest heaving. He knew this war was far from over. The aliens would come again, with greater force, with more fury. But for now, in this moment, humanity had stood firm. And they would do so again. The war room aboard the flagship was dimly lit, its towering walls pulsing with eerie blue light. Massive reptilian figures stood gathered around a holographic display of the burning human colony below, their sharp eyes fixed on the beta unfolding in real time. The room hummed with the low, guttural murmurs of warlords and strategists, their expressions unreadable as they watched the beta report update. At the center of the chamber stood the commandant, his black armor still scorched from combat, his claws clenched into fists. He had been certain of victory. The human forces were battered, outnumbered, and technologically inferior, yet they had not fallen. Even as the advanced, pushing them back inch by inch, the humans refused to yield. Their numbers should have broken by now, their spirits crushed beneath the might of the Dominion. And yet, despite overwhelming odds, they stood firm, forcing the into an uneasy stalemate. A towering figure stepped forward from the shadows, the warlord, a being of immense power and authority, his deep crimson armor signifying his rank. His slitted golden eyes fixed on the commandant, his tone laced with displeasure. You assured us they would break. That humans were primitive and weak, he growled, his voice reverberating through the chamber. The other warriors turned their heads toward the commandant, awaiting his response. The commandant hesitated for the briefest of moments, recalling the beta in painful detail. He had seen the fire in the humans' eyes, the way they fought despite their wounds, their dwindling ammunition, their impossible odds. He had underestimated them. They should have, the commandant admitted grudgingly, his claws scraping against the edge of the war table. Their cities are in ruins. Their armies are scattered. And yet they refuse to fall. His voice was edged with disbelief, as if he could not comprehend what he had witnessed. It defied logic. The had conquered countless worlds, had seen species crumble before their superior technology and merciless tactics. None had resisted the way these humans did. The warlord narrowed his eyes, studying the shifting holographic map as new alerts began flashing across the display. Reinforcements. More humans were arriving. The commandant tensed, watching as fresh squads of human soldiers surged into the battlefield, outnumbered yet relentless, throwing themselves into the fight with the same unwavering determination. They fought not for survival alone but for something deeper, something the struggle to comprehend. The warlord exhaled slowly, his golden eyes never leaving the screen. Then you do not understand them, he said finally, his voice quieter now, though no less powerful. They do not fight because they believe they can win. They fight because it is who they are. Silence fell over the chamber. The weight of the words pressed down upon the gathered, their usual arrogance replaced with something resembling unease. The humans had suffered staggering losses, yet each time they should have collapsed, they rose again, defying all logic, all strategy. Their weapons were crude compared to the Dominion's advanced technology, yet they wielded them with a ferocity that turned the tide of battle. They had no grand fleets, no planetary defenses capable of resisting an invasion, yet they stood against an empire that had crushed civilizations far more powerful than theirs. A sharp beeping interrupted the silence. The holographic map zoomed in on a new area, one of the human strongholds thought to be on the verge of collapse. But instead of retreating, the humans were advancing. The forces, despite their superior numbers and firepower, were being pushed back. The commandant's throat tightened as he watched, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The humans had no logical reason to fight with such ferocity. Their planet was lost. Their people were dying. And yet they pressed on. One of the strategists clicked his mandibles in frustration. "It is as if they do not fear death," he muttered, his tone carrying an edge of nervousness. "Even when the battle is lost, they continue to fight." The warlord's gaze did not waver from the display. "That is because they do not see it as lost," he said. His voice carried no admiration, no fear, only the cold acknowledgement of a reality that was dawning upon them all. They stand firm even when all hope is gone. The commandant clenched his fists once more. He had expected an easy conquest, another swift victory for the Dominion. But what they faced here was something different. The humans did not crumble like other species. They did not surrender when faced with inevitable defeat. They did not accept extinction as their fate. Another alert flashed. A new offensive. The humans were launching a counterattack. The commandant inhaled sharply. "By the word, they'll never stop," he whispered, the words barely escaping his lips. The warlord straightened, his gaze hardening. "Then we must ask ourselves a question," he said. "Are we prepared to fight an enemy that does not know when to die?" No one in the room answered. The hum of the war room felt heavier, the realization of what they were up against settling like a storm waiting to break. They had always believed in power, in dominance, in the certainty that they were the apex force of the universe. But now, for the first time, they were beginning to understand the truth about humanity. The humans would not stop. They would not surrender. They would fight until the last breath left their bodies, until their world was nothing but dust, and even then, the embers of their defiance would remain, ready to ignite again. They had fought many wars. But this one would be different. Because against all logic, all odds, all reason, humanity stood firm. And they would do so again.